Hey guys, this is Mikro. It's been 2 weeks since I've posted like a meta related video for New World, so I thought I would do another one. And this time I wanted to format it more of a tier list, so it was a little bit easier to follow what my actual rankings are, and then you can contrast that with like what I'm talking about and why I think each build is good. Uh, So a lot of the basis for I think the meta that's come of recent is ultimates, and just like in general on Fresh Start Vines is very good, but outside of Fresh Start and with like any server in general, Vines has definitely been used more, I'd say, than other ultimates as of recent. Like Detonate's still getting traction, but I think more and more bruisers are even gravitating to Vines because they realize how nice it is to just keep people in place, and it makes it easier for them to kill people. So I'd say that ultimate is getting a decent bit better. PTR will change a lot when that new ult comes out that inflicts disease on everyone. I imagine most people will be running that, and some of these changes will, some of the rankings I have will move around a bit. But the whole, like, just to show like a clip of like why I think it's good, I'll just play this. So this happened yesterday. Yeah, so you get that ult. So I guess I'll jump to the rankings here. I'll pull them up. And the reason why I have a lot of these pylon things in the category of their own is because you get these ults super fast. And I mean, you can see from that play, like the playmaking potential of having an ult. I think pylon builds are generally better for supports than non-pylon builds right now. It's not that pylon's like inherently broken, it just charges the ult uh, almost twice as fast. So, but you do give up some of the utility from having other things. Maybe it is a little bit broken. But yeah, I would definitely say Pylon has gotten more favorable in my eyes. I think a lot more people are trying Pylon and are realizing how good it is, especially when you have Pylon Burst, because then it speeds up the ult charging process even further. When the dots actually contribute to ult charge, and when more bleed stuff contributes to ult charge, I think uh, Pylon will be charging ults even faster, and I don't think you could really have an ult that charges too fast at this point, considering their like relative power level. So I'd say ult battery builds are in general better than non-ult battery builds for supports and tanks. Bruisers, it's still pretty similar to what it's always been. I think greatsword, there's a way to run it that people aren't running it right now that makes it inherently a very strong complement. It's like maybe you run groups of two Great Axe Warhammers and one Greatsword Warhammer, and I'll show you why, and I'll go over the theory of that in a second. And then I think Kill Squad has not changed much at all. Greatsword is still very good. You can chase people down, you could basically two-tap people. So that build's very good. Blunderbuss is also very good in Kill Squad because it's survivable and very good at killing people. Musket ranges from A to S tier depending on the player. There are some players on servers that easily make the musket S tier to like SS tier, and it's like not even fair. But for the majority of players that are on musket, I would say it's like an A tier weapon. Bow, I would say it's B tier. Uh, it's not bad in a kill squad, but it doesn't really do a ton. It's mostly there just to like kind of pad. It might even be C tier to be honest. Like I don't think bow is nearly as strong as those other kill squad builds. Fire staff I don't think is very viable anymore, and I don't think there's many other kill squad builds that are viable. Like there's like SNS based like old schizos, and that works, but greatsword's like sort of just a better version of that. So I don't know why you wouldn't run it, considering like if I go to like greatsword perk tree, like with crosscut, if you get the cross execution off, you basically are just gonna two tap someone. So if you're going like that kill squad build, you generally go mostly into onslaught. Have this set up right now for a tank oriented build, which I'll talk about in a second here. But I'm gonna go through left to right. Bruisers, Great Axe Warhammer, still very strong. I already talked a little bit about Greatsword Warhammer and what I was thinking about it. You would change this to something like I think I'm missing a few things. This one needs to change. This one needs to change. Probably go into that. Like, it's something like this. You could take out crosscut. You could put in skyward slash if you wanted to. I don't think that matters a lot. I think the Roaring Rupture is the best perk the greatsword has, and I don't think people realize that. The reason why it's so good is you can, if you so the base combo that I've been playing with greatsword, relentless rush into Roaring Rupture into secondary Warhammer seems very very strong. So for this to work, you need to have aggressive shifter. You need to be in a path of onslaught. You go through a clump that's been hit by usually a great axe like Gravwell. You you have your adaptive rush, right? So that's going to root everyone for 1 second. You swap to the Roaring Rupture, you activate this. If you are in the onslaught stance, this will pull people into you. And then you swap to Warhammer, and then you do your Sundering Shockwave, and then that's just going to rend everybody, keep them in place. And then you combo that into Vines. And that usually nukes any clump in the game. It doesn't matter if it's a point tank team, it doesn't matter if it's a normal team. So I think this build is underrated, and there's ways to like change this around to be more tanky or for it to be more kill squad oriented. But the combo of rooting people in place, pulling them into you, and then stunning them again basically makes it so people can't play the game. And that generally, when builds make it so people can't play the game, they are very good. Which is why CC got nerfed with Ice Gauntlet, but then there's other ways to get the CC with the new weapon, so it doesn't really matter a ton. So that's why I have that in A tier. Greatsword Great Axe I don't think is as good because you can like do this combo like on your own, but the Warhammer stun after like really extends it and opens the opportunity for other people to like kind of wipe your clump. I think it's better to have two people with the Warhammer because Warhammer is just such a strong weapon in general in wars. And I threw on Great Axe Blunderbuss. I think there's other builds that could fit there, but there's not really other builds that you run in a Bruiser setup that are considered to be meta. It's mostly the Great Axe Warhammer. I think Greatsword Warhammer is more experimental, but I think if people actually know how to play it, it is very, very good. The problem is most people I don't think read the perks here nor understand how to play for them. That's kind of a general thing in New World in general. It's like if you don't play for your perk tree, you won't get as much value as other people. Like for Greatsword, it's always just about juggling which stance you're in and leveraging the perks associated with that. So you really want to make sure you have the root when you use this adaptive rush. There's also a perk that you can get for this that will basically make it so you can get out of any root stun in the game and it will clear all your debuffs, so that's very good to have on Relentless Rush. The Roaring Rupture has a slow, which is kind of nice. It's a little bit less necessary, but yeah, I'll go back to the tank tree here in a second. I believe you drop this, and then this is a good tank build, and then this is also like a good tank build. Like both these are good. Blade Honing is just a nice thing to have in general, but if you're like pure tank and you're not really doing damage, then I think Guarded Shift's a little better. Reason why I don't think Critical Comeback is good is this has the problem that Healing Tomb has, where it's off your base health. So this is 25% base health, so this is healing you for about 1500, no matter what like amount of health you have. So the health I don't think is significant. The stamina is really good, but that there's other weird ways to work around that. Like you can get the like one thing I talked about like, almost jokingly with people recently is you don't really need heart anymore technically because there's the rune glass that gives you +1 stam. If you put one of those in your armor, you don't really need hardy because you get to that point where you could have 3 dodges fairly consistently with most weapons. So something kind of funny to consider, but I don't know if I would completely do that, but it's like you don't really the stamp stuff isn't as valuable as people think. You can it can get you to the point where you can triple dodge without hardy, which I think makes it interesting because then you open up more slots for what you can do on your ring. Like you could have leeching, and then you could be like even more tanky. Which this is already super tanky because it has leeching as a passive and bonus leeching if you block something first. So yeah, uh, popping to support wise, IGVG with Pylon I think is better than IGVG in general. I've talked about this with like other videos, but the problem with IGVG right now is if you don't there's no util for IGVG. So I don't see why you don't just go Pylon and pop out more ultimates, which itself will generate more util. The storms, they're good, but they don't generate ults as fast as Pylon does. So I don't see much of a purpose for it other than like I guess proccing Malachites for people, which is a little bit of an update to IG or to Ice Scotland in general. I think Malachite's now better than Opal because it works. It's not bugged anymore, so it works off other people's like roots and CCs. So that's like generally better, so you don't have to like spam yourself into your storm. Like you'll still get that activation, but that's like kind of tangent. Pylon though is generally better than anything else right now, just by how fast you can get ultimates. Like I believe in this war I posted yesterday, I had like probably around 20 to 25 ultimates, maybe a little bit more than that. In a normal war, I would have like with the other builds I play, it would be closer to like maybe 10. So it's getting significantly more ults, and because I'm not using Stoneform, I'm using my ult all the time because I don't have to hold it as a defensive, which isn't. I still think VG BB is very very strong, but that's like the only knock I have on it is like you have to like always hold that ult, and you can't really get the value out of the ult constantly because if you don't have that ult, like you will die less, but if you don't have the stone form, then you're just dead. So you have to like hold on to it all the time. But I think stone form is still very, very, very good, and it's like situational when the stone form is better and when vines is better. And I think outside of fort on defense, vines is better. Inside the fort on defense or outside the fort on defense for your point, stone form is generally better unless you have an ice gauntlet. If you're inside the fort on defense, vines is better because you more focus about getting kills at that point. And then it's like almost the opposite for attack, where on attack outside you generally want vines, and then inside you would want stone form because you need to actually be able to live through the gate. That being said, I don't think anyone on uh no one in NA that I know of that is like considered to be a tier 1 company has been able to win an offensive war versus another tier 1 company because of how broken aspects of Fort are, which have not been changed, and I don't believe will be changed because I don't think the devs really pay attention to that as much. So I don't expect territories to really flip. At least it's limited to how many territories the tier 1 companies can own now, I guess, or that will be with the upcoming PTR, but it is a little sad. But in terms of support builds, I think definitely look to run Pylon if you're in like any build. I think Pylon is better, and I think it will be even better next patch because the way the dots work with the rune glass is if you have your ice gauntlet out and your Pylon hits someone, it's going to proc the dot off of that too, which means you're going to charge twice as fast with Pylon as you did before. So it's like I don't know, you will get ult very very fast if you run ice Pylon. And ults are very good. So yeah, BBVG as a support, still a really good build. I think as like if you're in like a melee group with BBVG, it's a little bit less good than if you're in a kill squad group with it. Which I just list BB in the kill squad group because there's like so many variants of BB that people run there, but it's always better than like anything else just because BB inherently can be squishier but still as tanky as other builds, which isn't super fair due to the Undying passive only being 30 seconds, which that should be, in my opinion, like a 60-second cooldown. It's not a really fair aspect of the kit, but yeah, Scotland Void Gauntlet as a standard thing. I think it's still good. You still need them, but I don't think. Well, I don't know if you really need them if you run pylon ones. I think pylon ones are significantly better, but it's still a really solid build if you have the gear for it. Like this could be A tier. I think it's between B and A. It's like not bad. I think BBVG is a little bit better, just because you could put more people on disease cap. Disease cap gets kills, but people generally are on disease cap. I think next patch BBVG is a little bit worse because people will be running that ult that puts people on basically disease cap on its own. So you don't need the BBVG as much. But for now, it's a very, very strong build, and I don't think it would be a bad build next patch. It's just if everyone's on disease cap already, BBVG's util goes down a little bit. The Ren's still really, really good from Orb, though. And BBIG, I think, is still a solid build. If I were to build like an ideal group right now, it would probably be two Great Axe Warhammers, a Greatsword Warhammer, and then like either a BBVG or an IGVG. Though I think BBIG is still very good, and you can't have like it's hard to have too many BBIGs. Like both these are still very very solid builds. I just think if you run it with Pylon, it's just significantly better. Um, but melees feel pretty good on fresh start in general. But that's also because you can't get the mage gear early on due to the drops not really being farmable versus melees have a lot of really easy farmable best in slot items. Okay, tank side, this is the part that I am more known for and why I get slotted and most of the wars I get slotted. So BBIG with Pylon, it is insane. It's like the same purpose for why this is good. Played it in this other war, and I forget what I got at the end, but I did very very well with it. It felt very very good. So I have a little bit more deaths than I normally have because the stone. I'm not running stone form, and there's the pylon bug, so you have to be like wary of that. As well as it's like a pug group, so I don't have like a dedicated like healer that I'm like super super comfortable with. Like there'd be, I think most wars I have now with stone form, I'm usually between 2 and 4 deaths, sometimes like under 2, and then for like this build with Ice Gauntlet, I'd say 4 to 5 deaths would be about the normal amount. Maybe 6 would be pushing it a little bit. With the Ice Gauntlet, it's like if you double tap the button for Tomb, it will just cancel it. So you have to be really worried about that. I think an easy solution to that is binding it to a keybind that's like kind of far away that you won't accidentally double tap. And then generally don't try to break out of your tomb by pressing Q again, or like whatever your Ice Tomb button is, but like try to break it. That will get you ult charge, it will get you the undying effect, or it will give you the what do you call it effect? Um Fortify effect, which is good, and it will also help build your ult a little bit. But as long as you don't double press, it's not really a problem. If you still build your Ice Tomb and you get hit while you're doing that, it will break it. So my solution's been to like jump away a little bit and then press it, or do an iframe into pressing it, so that those iframe animations kind of cover that. Uh, but you definitely have to like pre-plan it a little bit more. You can't just be reactionary with Tomb if you want to live. Greatsword Warhammer. This is a build that I am actively testing. I think it is S tier to maybe being broken tier. Uh, this I imagine will pick up steam in the future. I don't think it's popular now, but I'll go through why I think it's absolutely broken. So this is the tree that I've been like playing with. There's a few other people that have been playing with a similar tree. I know some people prefer the blade honing. It doesn't matter as much. The big picture of why this build is good, so that combo I talked about earlier with Relentless Rush and Roaring Rupture, so you have that, so you clump people up, you go into the Warhammer, you stun them. If you run this at 300 con, which I would recommend doing, then those stuns are going to last even longer. So you're just like basically grouping up everyone on point into one singular clump for your team to wipe. If people go on you, you could activate Calamity Counter. Calamity Counter, as people normally run it, is very, very bad. The reason why Calamity Counter is actually insane if you play it well, though, is because people don't realize for some reason that, well, the ranged are really stupid, and they'll shoot this. I don't know why ranged shoot this, but they always shoot this. The melee, they kind of know not to, but they still sometimes will. But like, I have life staff people like shooting me while I'm doing this. If you get to 3 blocks with this, the knockback is the key thing. So what the knockback does, it's a 4 meter AoE knockback. So that's as big as a Warhammer stun, and when you're the difference between stunned and being knocked back is the knockback itself is like one of those abilities that like puts people in an animation that doesn't seem to be shortened by freedom or anything like that, and it prevents them from playing a game. And if you're on build and you prevent people from playing a game, that usually results in kills. It's why I run blast shot still on blunderbuss, although I don't think as many people run that. But any build that prevents people from playing the game for a period of time generally is better as a point person if you could actually run it and live. The other thing that is very, very good about this greatsword tree is, you know how I talked about builds that are ult batteries tend to be better? Well, you have ult battery stuff built into this. So unflinching blade bleeds every third tick of bleed will give you like a tick towards your ult. So bleeds, the TLDR of bleeds is they charge your ult faster than normal abilities. So this has passive bleed built on in here, right? This is also a AoE bleed that applies to people. So that's like another bleed that you have. So you're basically just throwing these around. You're in general, you're an aggressive shift. People try to attack you. You can either try to proc guarded shift, or what I usually do is I swap to Warhammer, drop a stun, and then I go into guarded shift. And then once you're into this tree, then you have passive 15% fortify. If someone hits you while you're in this tree, you get 20% fortify. So this is like Blunderbuss S, where it just has a lot of abilities that just prevent you from taking excessive damage. Faultless Defender also applies Rend to people when people hit you, so there's like just a lot of util in this. It groups people up, it prevents them from playing the game, it results in kills. I don't think there's a lot to like really hate about this build. It kind of has it all. It has like the Great Axe Warhammer shit built into it, where you're grouping people, you're stunning people, you're not letting them play the game, and it also has the Void Gauntlet built into it, where you're able to rend people, you're able to cause like dots that generate your ult faster. I think it's overall very strong. The weekend's also something to not really forsake, and also the uninterruptible part of this seems to be very, very good. I need to test this a little bit more, but from like an eye test slash feel perspective, when you get this uninterruptible off, it feels like when I go to Warhammer and I land a stun, if they stun me while I'm in uninterruptible, that seems to carry over to my Warhammer, meaning I can't be stunned out of my stun in Warhammer, meaning I always win that and always am able to hit the stun on them, which makes this build even better for most classes. If I'm wrong about that, it's not as good, but then this also lets you go into Calamity Counter and not being able to be stunned while you're using this to kind of counter the counter, if you will. Which will just basically make it so that you know you have like that other knockback effect. This build, I built it with Refreshing Ward. I think it's insane with Refreshing Ward because people hit you, you get your stuff back faster. You can kind of go infinite with this. I've seen people that were SNS that I've told to like try this build because I didn't have the gear right away do significantly better in like all game modes. Like they'd go from getting bottom of OPR to getting like top 1 to 3 with this build. It feels like it's very, very strong, very underrated. Most people have just tried the left tree of greatsword, but the right tree has a lot of util. The heal passive on this is nothing to laugh about. Anytime you use an ability when you're in Path of Defiance, you basically have an additional heal effect. So you just your health bar is like almost always at max, and if you get hit while you're at max, then you gain fortify. It flows very, very nicely, and it feels very good. I don't know if you need shirking for it with it. I think it's a little bit better with freedom pieces, but that's also preference. So I'd probably go Resil, Refreshing Ward, Freedom. Personally, maybe 1 to 2 shirking for it. LA version wouldn't be bad, but you could block elemental attacks, so it's not really a big deal. And then that block also applies Ren to people. Well, not to range, but it applies Ren to most people. So I don't know. There's not a lot to hate about this build if you play it. The main thing is like juggling when you're blocking, when you're doing damage, because if you block and then you start doing damage, you get this 15% lifesteal on basics. I go Giant Slayer over Heavy Blade because most people in wars are above 90% health because they're being full healed all the time by their healers, but I could see an argument to go to Heavy Blade too. I think both are pretty solid options. But that's why I have this build in S tier. I could even see it to get to SS tier because it has everything BBVIG can do, but even more util somehow. I just haven't verified it myself in a competitive war yet, so I'm just being cautious when I'm putting in S tier, which is still saying a lot about it. If I'm putting in S tier and I'm being cautious. BVVG I still think is still a very, very solid build. Not a lot to hate about the build, having Oblivion, having the Undying, which is more consistent than Ice Gauntlet Tomb at this point, and as well as just if you build it with the 300 conversion, then you extend like the root on Scream, and it feels very, very good to play. I slightly prefer playing the Pylon build over it right now, just because how fast you get your ultimate, and roots feels like it changes wars. Like how that clip I showed at the beginning of this video from that last war where I killed like basically 10 people with one ultimate. I can't do that with BBVG, but BBVG is very consistent, uh, shutting people down. Very consistent shutting people down and very high survivability with the stone form. So I could see both builds being very good. SNS Great Sword, if you run it with Trenchant Strikes and Plague. I think it's Trenchant Strikes and Plague Crits. There's a there's a perk that lets you, when you do a heavy attack, you inflict a rend, and it has a cooldown. And there's another perk where if you do a heavy attack and you inflict disease, and that also has a cooldown. But there's a trick with this, where if you have it on your SNS and greatsword, and if you swap to your other weapon, that perk will go back off of cooldown. So you could either have like one weapon with that perk, and then you just toggle back and forth, so you just can infinitely apply that debuff to people, or you can run it on both weapons and basically just be a single target debuff machine that just keeps on preventing people, or keeps on giving people a 15% rend, keeps on giving people 25% disease with 0 cooldown. So that itself makes it a very, very strong build, which is why I rate it higher than the SNS. If you don't run it that way, I think SNS is still not a bad build, but uh, not as good as I initially thought it would be. I didn't put the When I originally projected for this patch, I thought that Spear Tank would be really good. I didn't expect Rapier to get nerfed that hard. I think you could run Greatsword and Spear. To me, it feels like it's just inherently worse than Warhammer in most aspects. The reason why it was like, oh, you could run Spear and Rapier before is because Rapier was kind of broken, and then it synergized well with Spear because it had the same attribute with Dex, and as well as Spear puts people on rend cap instantly, which is very nice. That's the main util of Spear. And the weekend perk is also very, very strong, but it's single target, so it's like not as good. But you don't even run that in that build. It's mostly about the sweep and about the rend cap. So I think that's like another option that would be between B and A tier, but I don't think people run that as like at all right now, so I'm not even putting it on the list. And then lastly, heavy like greatsword Warhammer, or heavy Warhammer great axe. I don't think it's a good build anymore. I think it's between D and C tier. Uh, the problem with this is you somehow instantly die, which before was never the case. But now if you're like dying instantly with this, it's like, why would you even run it? Uh, which is why I think this greatsword Warhammer is just better, because the great axe, like, you will get farmed if people look at you. With greatsword, if people look at you, you activate your calamity counter, and then you put them on their back, and then you're perfectly safe, and you're happy, and they get to die. So I don't know. That I'd say overall, builds that charge ultimates very fast are better right now in terms of ball gameplay. Ultimates are OP. You should be playing for them as much as you can. Kill Squad hasn't changed a lot. Bruisers hasn't changed much. I think the greatsword stuff is very good, just people aren't running it properly. If you play for this Relentless Rush Roaring Rupture combo, you will get results. It's just people generally don't play for it. The problem I had with this combo before is I didn't realize that you had to be an Onslaught before you went into Relentless Rush for the combo. It's still good if you don't do that, but if you can get a heavy off before you go for this, you will do more. So anyways, that's it for this video. I have more gameplay on the channel. Fresh start stuff is taking up most of my time. There's a lot less content going on right now, and have fun with that and enjoy the game and the resurgence of players.